speakers. We've got two right now. And this is Ron Lanham and Joe Perdue. They're from Wild Weird, West Virginia. They're researchers in UFOs and cryptids and other such paranormal topics. Here you go, guys. Take it away.
Woo!
I want to get a good selfie with all this.
Oh, yeah.
So let's do that.
We'll get it. Let's get it. All right, so we're gonna take a picture of you all. Y'all ready for that?
So you guys get in your poses. We don't.
Yeah, everybody can pose.
Try to get it at an angle so we can get everybody.
I've got the big long arms.
Yep, he's got the big long arms, so it's gonna be good. Trust me, this will be great. Okay, everybody, get ready for this. Oh, look at that, professional. There we go. All right, ready? Okay, go ahead. Everybody, hands up now. 1, 2, 3. Yes, that's perfect. Give yourself the round of applause.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Well, I guess we're going to start out this thing from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell, this is not going to be your typical presentation because there is not one but two of us. And there was once before that we were speaking, we got more people coming. We got more people coming. Somebody told me that I was a wrestling hype man, so I was like the ring announcer. So, this is the Wild and Weird tag team presentation. That's how we're going to do this. This is a tag team operation. We host a podcast. So, coming to you from West Virginia, weighing in at a combined weight of 425 pounds, we have Ron Lanham and Joe Perdue of Wild and Weird, West Virginia, and the West Virginia High Strangeness Collective, the official paranormal ambassadors of the world.
That was good, actually. Thank you. That's probably the best introduction that we have ever had. As he said, we do all that stuff plus more. We're also on Wild and Weird Radio. We will go over all of that at the end. Yeah. We have all had individual paranormal experiences and whatnot through our career. I guess it's career, right? Sort of.
I think so.
Life, career. It's all the same, really. But let's go up here to the next one. That's our latest endeavor, and that's kind of where a lot of I don't know, it kind of started ages ago, honestly. But this is where it's at now, and this is our research.
And fun fact for you guys, this is the first time that I've seen the collective's new logo, and it is awesome.
Oh, you like that? I thought I showed it to you once.
No,
well, ladies and gentlemen, the new logo. Okay, so anyway, just to give you a little bit of background, because that's what you do with these things. You have to tell everyone your origin story. So I will do that now. I will tell you my origin story. I am the co-host of Wild and Weird Radio, co-owner of West, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? Yep. Professional, here, this is my thing. I am a photographer, I am a musician, professional artist. If you guys were over at our table, there was a book there. I did the art on that. I redid the book art for another one of Dave Spink's things. We have both been in the Small Town Monsters documentaries. I was in Mothman Legacy, and Joe was on the trail. Yeah, that one. On the trail of UFOs, Dark Sky. He's also been in some other stuff, and I'll let him tell you about that now.
Well, some of the other stuff you might recognize me from if you watch the Discovery Channel, Travel Channel, any of those lights, or Discovery Plus. I was on the last episode of Finding Bigfoot, where we brought them out to one of our research sites. The whole episode was actually spurned on by the fact that we went out into the field on a hot report and collected data and recorded it in real time and put it out there for everybody to see in real time. And that kind of set some fires under some people. They were needing a reunion episode. Boom, there we go. Let's go out here and hang out with Joe because we know this guy. He's crazy. We love him. Let's go do it. So that's how that turned out, and it went great. If you've seen the episode, it was really fun. We had a good time. And my big thing is I like Bigfoot research, obviously, but I know enough well into the UFO stuff because of my experiences in the U.S. Air Force. I was a sheet metal fabricator. Basically, I was a special materials technician, meaning resins, fiberglass, stealth technology, things of that nature. Kind of translates into what we do with Wild and Weird West Virginia a lot, because of the special materials that we use to create our products and collectibles for you guys to take home and put on your shelves. Except for the stealth stuff, we need to work on getting some stealth material for our projects. I think
Well, it's there, you can see it.
So we started the collective shortly after starting Wild and Weird West Virginia. We needed a distinguishing entity, really, to kind of separate from the art business side of things. Because a lot of people just associated what we did and us with our art that we had on the tables, and not the fact that we were actually out in the field beating foot and collecting data on a regular basis. So the collective was born from that. And the collective's initiative is to build a community in an open source environment where we are working with other researchers on a regular basis, and there are research teams that operate independently from us, but are still a part of the collective. And it gives a giant networking opportunity for researchers of all things paranormal, all things high strangeness. So UFOs, paranormal, specters, ghosts, psychic activity, Bigfoot, cryptids, you name it, we're all under one umbrella.
So one of the things that the main thing today is called related phenomena. Now, what that typically, what it is it's basically the unified field theory of the paranormal. This is something I came up with, and you may hear it now. Every now and again, people are kind of coming up to realize that this may be something.
But nearly 30 years ago.
It was in the 90s. The idea that all these things may be related. And so the unified field theory of the paranormal, and this is a little thing I want to do with you guys today, because I actually learned this from Stanton Friedman, who we were lucky enough to actually
sit down
and have a talk with, and which was very wonderful. But he said he used to ask, because I don't know how people saw UFOs at the beginning, or at the end, because at the beginning he was always afraid. So every time we do this, to honor him, we always ask at the beginning. But I took it one step further. So I want everybody to raise your hand. Have you or a family member seen a ghost, had a psychic experience? Any of you?
Anybody in the audience?
Okay, keep your hands up, okay? You guys who did it, keep your hands up. Does this pertain to you? How many had a particular area in their home growing up that gave them a weird sense of feeling? Fear, anxiety. How many have memories of unaccounted or missing time?
Now, if you drop your hand, you can raise it back up?
Yes, you can. How many have seen a UFO? You want to stand up and get that? Because this is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here's the best part. How many are artists or musicians? Yep.
Almost the exact same group of people.
Watch this stuff. How many never told a single person outside of your family about it? Okay, so I am with you guys until recently, which was a few years ago. I decided to actually start kind of talking about this stuff. And some of my stories have been told, one of which was told in the Small Town Monsters, the Mothman Legacy. We're not talking about that today, though. Today we're going to go back a little bit further and something I would not talk about at that time, but now I'm a little bit more comfortable talking about it. And so, how all this stuff started was with a sighting. This was my sighting. This was in the mid-70s, actually. And it was about 75, 76 or so, when I've been able to figure out. And we were traveling home from, it was me, my mom, cousins, whatever. And we were visiting someone. And we were traveling home one night, late evening. And there's a strange light in the sky. And yeah, I created that. That's kind of what I do. But it was a bright orange ball light. I remember this thing just like it was yesterday. And actually, when I created this, it kind of gave me cold chills. But my dad pulls off the road, and he gets out, and he's looking at this orange light in the sky. And this thing's moving, by the way. It's not just sitting there. It's kind of doing this little number. There's no flashing lights. There's nothing like that. I'm little, okay? I remember the people in the car saying, hey, is that a helicopter? The hat's out laughing. He's like, I think it's a flying saucer or UFO or something like that. I remember that part. Now, the next thing I remember is we're driving away. And it's darker than this. The sun is set now. We get home. I lived with my grandparents at the time. And we're a little late getting home. And, my grandma's all kind of freaked out. And we tell her what happened, or they tell her what happened. I'm not important. I'm a kid. You've all been there, right? So she starts talking about, the end of the world and God's getting ready to destroy humanity and all this stuff. And, it's kind of funny. Now it is. But back then, it kind of freaked me out. And Mom was like, okay, that's enough of that, and took me out of the room, right? So what's funny about this is we never talked about it again. We didn't talk about this again. And I would, for years, have these reoccurring dreams, which was kind of interesting because I would, in this dream, I would see this light in the sky, and I would have this memory. But when we pulled off the road, it wasn't quite right. It was not right at all. Later on, I would find the area where this actually did happen, and it was way not right. I became interested in UFOs, paranormal, as one does in the 70s growing up, because that was the age of, this is the pop culture age, Close Encounters, all that, Star Wars, Battlestar, great time to be alive.
Leonard Nimoy in general.
Absolutely in search of. But so it kind of spurred me on to do these things. And later on in life, I got involved in some more psychic research, ghost research, etc., etc. And then I really just fell in love with psychic research and out-of-body experience research. Kept valid logs, these massive logs of these experiences. I even built, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting that I have this thing, but we actually have, that's me. Look, that's me. That was 1994, actually, back when I was looking for ghosts. And it was fun times. This is what got me started in kind of looking at this as a possible related phenomenon. When I got into out-of-body research at the time, there wasn't a whole lot out there on it. There was a little bit of stuff. So I built myself a little something. I got me a biofeedback monitor from Radio Shack, and I built myself some goggles that helped me relax. They had a little light go back and forth and help me relax. And during these experiences, which started off pretty benign, floating around, just like your typical out-of-body experiences, eventually I started seeing these shapes, symbols, figures, things like that, right? And this led to those, which are called spontaneous out-of-body experiences. Now, at the time, I had not heard this word, and today I still don't hear too much about this. This basically is, instead of you willing it to happen, it just happens. So one night, I was trying to go to sleep, and this keeps happening over and over again, and trying to stop it. And I'd stop it, and it would start back up. The same vibrations and whatnot. It's all typical. And I remember one time waking up and the whole room's kind of blue. Okay, cool. Move on. In the 1990s now, we fast forwarded. I was not a believer in this, by the way. Alien abductions and whatnot was all over TV, and I'm just like, I don't know. It's kind of not my thing. UFOs I could get into, but not really so much with that. But what really was weird about this is I started reading one of these books. There was a little thing, a little checklist, kind of like we did at the beginning of this. And there was a part about the unknown or out-of-place memory kind of thing. And I thought back, well, that's never happened. And then, wait a minute, there's a weird dream that happened. So I asked my mom about it. And she confirmed, yeah, that did happen, but here's why it's not right, because it wasn't on that road. When she told me where it was, I knew exactly where it was, which is the recreation that you saw in the beginning. And everything kind of came back. At that point, move that on. I ran into a friend from school. And this was my first case ever. These are the research notes, by the way, that I took from her experience. She possessed heightened psychic ability. She had no interest in UFOs, by the way, but she was very much in the metaphysical matters. She had been having strange dreams, odd memories, seeing ghosts, unexplained lights in the bedroom, remembered seeing beings emerge from closets, seeing her room and walls lit, and one night did see something outside her window that she did describe as nothing more than, a UFO because it fit the bill. But again, at this point, I'm thinking, well, this is kind of cool stuff, but I don't really know what to think about it. Then I found his books. And when I read Bud's books, it all kind of started making sense. Anybody remember that poll in 1991? There was a Roper poll, and in order to determine how many Americans might have experienced an abduction phenomenon, by the way, I don't like the word abduction, I like contact. So that experience of nearly 6,000 Americans, 119 answered in a way that Hopkins interpreted as supporting the ET interpretation of abductions. That's a lot of people. There is a great deal of people who may have had some form of experience. But this is also about the time that I left this field. And I would come back later, like maybe 15 years later actually, and pick up where I left off. Because there was a lot of uncomfortable truths to this. And there they are.
So a little bit about my background other than the Air Force background. I'm a former minister. I was a minister for most of my life to this point, and just in the last few years, we just haven't had a place to be, so we've been doing our own thing. And anyway, going back and looking at the spiritual matters and going back and looking at the historical records of a lot of these religious texts, which was just one of my hobbies as a minister. Like, I wanted to understand every culture, all the religions that I possibly could, so that way, if any of them came to me asking questions, I could talk to them and have the conversation. I didn't want to have to be like, oh, I'm going to have to get back to you on that, or oh, I don't have an answer for this. I wanted to be as prepared as possible. Now, when you start looking into the ancient Hebrew texts, you start seeing these things that are similar in all these other cultures. So if you go to a traditional Christian church, you see a lot of the same symbology mirrored in other religions that have to do with objects in the sky, wheels in the sky, the Jacob's ladder, the Watchers, for example, from the Book of Enoch. Angels and beings that are traveling from either heaven or another dimension into our dimension. It's common now within the modern religious pool, I will call it, that a lot of these groups believe that we're not necessarily in this position where, say, heaven is up in the sky and hell is down below your feet or whatever, but it's just separate dimensions. It's parallel with us currently and where we're at. It's just on the other side of the veil, which was common phrasing used in these ancient languages, was beyond the veil, just on the other side. We say all these things and we say them mildly, not taking in the whole scope of what these phrases mean in the grand scheme and how close and how similar they are with various other contact experiences. So we've got these different phenomena that are occurring in a spiritual sense. We have contact that's occurring in a physical sense. We have contact that is occurring in a mentor style sense. And we see that all throughout history in practically every religion. One of the most common ones that we like to refer to is the flood stories, because there's over 12,000 different cultures that have a flood mythology that is very, very, very similar to one another. So these are over 12,000 different cultures who share this common story, but for some reason only gets attributed to Gilgamesh or Noah.
Yeah, very true. It's very, very true. This is the Dogon. Anyone who watches, Ancient Aliens now, this is all probably nothing new to you, but it was at once. But the Dogon of Mali in Western Africa, these are amazing people simply because They tell the story of the Nomo and say that the Nomo are from the planet Sirius, the star system. So the Nomo landed on Earth in an arc, and it made a spinning descent to the ground with great wind and noise. Now, the most interesting part about them is that they still practice this strange dance, this strange ritual, and they enact that landing to this day. The Dogons say that the Nomo told them about their planet's orbit. The planet Jupiter had 4 moons, Saturn's rings, all of it, stuff they shouldn't have known. And in 1977, Robert Temple wrote this all down in a book called The Sirius Mystery. Great book. If you happen to find a copy of it, it's a great book. Carl Sagan, of course, pooh-hooed the whole thing and said that the Dogon had contact with Westerners, and they of course interpreted it for the West.
From our perspective here in North America, this is in Africa. You can look at native art and native tradition of the Cochina and look at the similarities of the headdresses, the similarities of the dances, the flailings and the spinnings and the tassels that they all wear, the same very similar headdresses, and this is 8,000 miles apart.
Yeah, these are geographically located where they could not have made actual contact, supposedly anyway. It's important to note that Sirius B, throw this up here for you. That's Sirius B right there. It had not been photographed or confirmed until 1970. So it further doesn't explain a 400-year-old Dogon artifact that apparently depicted Sirius' configuration for a ceremony which they held since the 13th century. They knew of Sirius A and Sirius B, and they knew of its orbits and the ways that this thing was operating. We couldn't even see that until the 1970s, which is just amazing to me. But they're not the only ones. There's some of your other ones right there, and these are some of the things that you were just talking about.
Yeah, you have the Blackfoot, the Hopi, the Dakota, Lakota. They all have these sky beings and star people that came to them to guide them, or were their ancestors.
Yeah, the star ancestors are always a big thing. And the funny thing is that we talk about it like, oh, they're talking about aliens. They didn't call them aliens. See, that's the thing.
Aliens was a term that was created really by us. We coined the term, when prior to that they were always called star people, sky people, or ancestors.
The above people, the sky people, the guardians of the stars. The Hopi believe their ancestors came from the Pleiades. Likewise, Dakota, they believe that their ancestors came from the Pleiades. The Cree say that they arrived on Earth from the stars as spirits and then became human, which is interesting. The Lakota, they believe that luminous spheres, they were alive, by the way, abducted children. I thought that was also very interesting. And this is, to me, more about the possibility that we're dealing with some form of contact. And it's not necessarily alien, I guess, is the word I would use for it. This isn't one single thing. That's what I'm trying to get at. And that's where the whole unified field theory of the related phenomena comes from. It comes from all these different things in paranormal, because we see all these bleed-overs. And you have actually witnessed some of these bleed-overs yourself.
Right.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the context of it is instrumental transcommunication IDC devices. And those are accounts of contacts with ghosts using the devices, spirit boxes, audio and video recording devices, as well as EMF detectors, which we've all used. I think that probably EVPs are going to be your most notable one. Everybody's probably pretty much done that, and they're pretty much familiar with it. But I think the most important thing to do with EVPs is that we try to figure out, what are we actually communicating with? There are some who believe we're talking about the dearly departed. There's no evidence of that. There's absolutely no evidence of that. Some of these EVPs, at least the ones that I've got, they do display intelligence. They do seem to display sometimes a foreshadowing, like and they're almost always this mechanically type sound, if you haven't noticed. So what are we actually communicating with?
Well, there's so many possibilities that what could be making contact with us, whether it be something from the other side or something that is somehow honing in on these devices, being able to communicate through them and use them in a way that is seemingly intelligent. Because you'll get these EVPs, which is electronic voice phenomena, sounds really garbled. It's just like sometimes like RF frequency, but has tonality and forms a word to a degree. And we interpret these things based off that. And these are brought up by EMF. That is what causes these electronic voice phenomena. They're spikes generally. If you have a trifold meter in your possession and you're recording, if you look and you're recording timestamps and you can actually, okay, well, we just got an EMF reading here. We need to check the audio at this time as well to see what came through, because you will have some form of radio frequency bleed over. It's inevitable because these devices are inadvertently or advertently designed to pick them up.
Yeah, almost in all cases you're going to have that. That's why we use multiple validation on a lot of our investigations. We use multiple sets of equipment and data sets just to catch that. Because, you know, it's one thing to catch an EVP, but it's another thing when you catch an EMF spike and you catch a radiation spike over here on something else. So, you know, there's always something else there. EMF is important because of this bottom part. Can high EMF radiation be responsible for reported vehicle and other equipment failures encountered by both UFO witnesses and paranormal investigators? These have happened on cryptid sightings, they have happened on UFO sightings, they have happened on so-called ghost sightings. So we
know for a fact, though, we do know for a fact that EMF will absolutely shut down any of your electronics. If it is a strong enough pulse, it can wipe out your electronics, your computer, your phone, your car, because now our cars run on computers. It can do quite a bit of damage depending on the severity of the pulse.
And most recently, almost as I'm making this thing, news is breaking every single day, so I had to go back and keep adjusting and tweaking everything. But this was from the Defense Intelligence Report. The document that says basically UAPs, they're giving off EMF reading, guys. Now, they kept that frequency secret, by the way.
Yeah, they didn't.
If you haven't noticed.
They didn't broadcast what this frequency is that they're collecting.
Only it has been admitted that it's been recorded. So, here is a good example of some of these incidents. 20 miles from North Dakota border, this is 1979, Marshall County Sheriff Deputy Val Johnson on patrol early in the morning on Highway 5 when he saw a bright light to the south of Highway 220. Johnson thought that maybe it was a crashed semi or downed plane, but as he approached, he said the light instantly jumped through his windshield and hit him like a 200-pound pillow, knocking him out. Now, according to the Sheriff's Office investigator report, Johnson's wristwatch and clock on the 1977 Ford LTD, remember those? That cruiser had stopped for 14 minutes.
Okay, so here's my big question, all right? This is my takeaway from this event. How do we know how hard a 200-pound pillow is versus a regular pillow?
I'm going to find out later.
That's just me. I'm a 200-pound pillow, you say. Uh-oh. Because at the right force, it's like a rock regardless.
Yeah, well, either way, it stopped that vehicle, and, you know, the point is that we had what would basically be a small EMP.
Right.
So
most likely that's what he felt.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it would feel, if you were speaking from personal experience, if you had been close enough to a heavy pulse electromagnetic field, you're gonna feel it, and you're gonna have a headache later, really bad.
Oh, it'll do some stuff to you. November 2nd, 1957, Levelland, Texas, two workers called the Levelland Police Department to report UFO sighting, telling the officer who was working on a desk at the police station that they had been driving for 4 miles west of Levelland when they saw a blue flash, another one of those blue flashes, light near the road, and they claimed their truck engine died and a rocket-shaped object rose up and approached the truck. So again, we have UFOs, power failures, It just seems to be, pretty common, right? So what else can EMF do? Well, back to this Defense Intelligence Reference document. This is probably one of my favorite parts of this thing. Would you work? There we go. So I think they're doing it right now, actually. Now this was for the black hole. The ability to instill fear, secondary to above, including with use of measuring the RF carrier waves, modulation, intracranial voices through thermoelastic expansion in intracranial space at 5 kilohertz via infrared. Let me explain that to you, what that means. Intracranial voices, that means you're hearing things in your head. So that means at the right frequency, we can beam thoughts into your head. We can actually do that. That's not science fiction, that's not conspiracy theory, that's fact. That can be done.
With physical instrumentation.
Now, how it's done is it vibrates the...
Nuclear.
That's the one, thank you. I'm not a doctor. Yes, it vibrates.
Apparently I'm a doctor now.
Apparently, I don't know. Either way, you hear the voice, because what was interesting about this is people who had actual hearing loss, this experiment did not work on. It also has the ability to direct thermal effects to include direct pain, erythema, second-degree burns. We've seen many so-called abductees, contactees who have had these burns after these encounters.
Right, and you see the arrhythmia. There's a reason why if you go to loud concerts, there are warnings and disclaimers that say if you have heart conditions,
The waves.
be aware, because there's subsonic frequencies and infrasound that could debilitate your heart, cause arrhythmia.
Yeah. The ability to cause frontotemporal headaches. Another thing that's reported with a lot of contactees and abductees, etc., is that they will have pounding headaches, loss of consciousness, muscle spasms, weakness, of course, use of pulse microwave to temporarily interfere with short-term spatial memory. What's that sound like? Yeah. So basically, we're saying we can wipe your memory out for short term, right?
Neuralizer.
So, pretty much what we're saying is this science fiction stuff, the stuff that we thought was, conspiracy theory, it's in writing now. Exposure to high levels
they're
of
in writing in
radiation.
official DoD documents.
Yes, you can definitely go look these up. We'll actually have a link to some of these on our forum soon. My favorite part is this guy. This is Michael Persinger. And in the lab, Persinger managed to actually use EM radiation in labs to generate reports of, you can read it right there, out-of-body type sensations, as well as the volunteers reporting alien contact-like experiences. They were not real, according to him, but they generated them either way.
They generated the feeling of such, which has a lot to do with the Persinger experiments were also being used in study of religious experiences. You hear the term often used sometimes with very religious people, that they felt this, it was like the spirit was on them. Or you'll hear the same thing from contactees where they just felt this presence that made them warm or gave them some kind of feeling of peace and calmness, which is very much akin to these religious experiences.
Yep. And then so forth in the paper that was published in 1983. Yes, 1983. That's how long ago it was, but yet it just came out like a year ago. How interesting when we get into this age of disclosure that we find things like this, but either way. In 1983, they figured out that mystical and religious experiences are hypothesized to be evoked by transient electrical microseizures within deep structures of the temporal lobe. I'm going to read the rest of that to you, but here's the best part of it. It allows access to infantile memories of parents, a source of God expectations, specific stimulations, evokes out-of-body experience, space-time distortions, intense meaningfulness, and dream sequences. What does that sound like to you?
Well, those sound like contact experiences and these religious experiences that you read about in the Old Testament, where you've got the old prophets, and then you also have these same experiences being canonized. And you've also got these same experiences being canonized in every major religion. So we have these beings, these entities, whatever they are, their communication seems to be frequency.
Yes, it does. And instead of looking at this as all Persinger does, is try to explain it away, saying that, oh, well, just because we can do the labs. But okay, so what's creating these electrical fields that are affecting the temporal lobe? No, he's not asking that question. He's not even trying to hypothesize about that. But instead of thinking that these things are all hallucinations, should we not possibly look at them as a vehicle for communication or contact? That's kind of where I am with this whole thing. Just because we can explain it away doesn't mean that that's quite the answer, right?
Right. All we know of magic is that magic is currently science we don't understand.
That's exactly what we know.
We can take the mystical, and once we understand it, now it's considered scientific. Because it can be studied, it can be manipulated, it can be examined, it can be validated to certain degrees, depending on the persuasion.
Yep. And they also found in another study that fluctuations in the EMF and high magnetic fields have been shown to cause visual hallucinations in the test subjects. This is a good one. Focus the field in the visual cortex, for example, and this induces eddies that cause the subject to see lights that appear as discs, lines, and they move the field around of this electrical field around, and it'll cause the subject to actually see that light, orb, or whatever move across the sky or room. Again, what does that sound like to you?
It sounds like a lot of these UFO sightings that get reported. Yeah.
And so if he puts it off on hallucination, doesn't that give it a chance to put it off on mental health and try to...
Absolutely. That was one of the goals of this study.
Yeah, but then they didn't do anything with mental health, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Now, also, anybody else that has any kind of questions along the way, just feel free to...
Oh yeah, tag us down. We don't have to wait.
We're used to interactive presentation.
Okay, so here's a fun one.
Okay, so this is what caused me to start looking into the relatedness of some of these other topics. So, like I said earlier when I introduced myself, that I was more into the Bigfoot research, flesh and blood kind of stuff. Because what I witnessed, I observed a creature, so I had a Bigfoot sighting, or at least what we call a Bigfoot. I had a sighting of 3 of these entities in 2001. They were doing very normal, very boring things, but they were very extraordinary creatures. They were just eating and feeding and then walked away into the woods. To me, that's a creature that's out in the woods. But there are so many reports of these paranormal, they're woo or paranormal Bigfoot. Woo is another word we don't like. And it's they get whitewashed. As soon as they come in, you get somebody who's an aper, and they're like, yeah, no, this doesn't line up with my philosophy, and it's just like any other religion, because it doesn't line up with what I believe, I reject. So these messages get thrown out, these reports get thrown out, and because they don't fit the parameters of what they think a Bigfoot report should be. Well, I had a paradigm shift, because we went out on a Bigfoot sighting report where the creature was seen running through a valley and then just wasn't. Not that it went up the hill and ran away or into the woods. It ran out into the valley, made some noise, and then just wasn't anymore. We went to the site. We were there within, I think it was 2 hours of the actual report being filed. So it was about 3 hours post-sighting. And we found trace evidence on the ground. We found tracks. We didn't find Bigfoot tracks. We did find bear tracks. Very, very large black bear tracks. State record in West Virginia for black bear, the front paw measured at like 7.5 inches across, and the rear paw was measured at being, I think, 6.5 inches across. Our bear's front paw was measuring at 9.5 inches across, and the rear foot was measuring at 7.5 inches. They were also radioactive.
It just hit 30 CPMs.
Yeah, that's the weird part.
So we
Probably.
get into the area. Now, Ron, much to my chagrin, because again, you got to think, at this moment, I'm like, we're going out to a Bigfoot report. Why do you have a Geiger counter? And like, what is this going to do? Well, then all of a sudden, we're down there in the area. We're right where the trace evidence was found, where the tracks were. And all of a sudden, we hear, and I'm like, Ron, what's that?
Yep, that was us jumping from 17.68 CPMs.
17.68
per minute.
17.68 is the neutral. That is the baseline for pretty much all of West Virginia.
1720. We jumped up to a 36, and you can see those spikes here. This is 36.
So the weird thing is we're reading 36 CPM. The average should be 17. And our tracks are right there.
You can also see these other little spikes that come up here and go down, and come up and go down. I've talked to multiple people after this event, by the way, and tried to figure out why that happened. People who work with nuclear material, and they have no idea. That's a brand new Geiger counter. It's absolutely calibrated. There's no reason for that thing to do that.
We went out to the area afterwards and even tested the soil for consistent radiation readings, and they were
17.
neutral at 17.
Now, what's
And
really strange, though, is
there's strata. When you pour plaster in the ground and you remove it from the ground, you remove strata from the ground as well. That strata remained with readings of trace radiation in the upper 20s for what was it, at least 6 hours.
it was about 6 to 8 hours.
That was the last time we had measured it.
Which was very strange. And that made you think a lot, didn't it?
It did. It put me in an uncomfortable position where I had to start taking off the rose-colored goggles that there's only the possibility of one thing running around out in the woods. And I'm now since that time have been working towards developing a theory.
Acceptance.
Yeah, is learned acceptance. We've been working on a theory pertaining to this that we've been kind of pushing out there and getting out there into the public, is that there are people who are experiencing things out in the woods and they only have words like Bigfoot to describe it. So they attribute it to Bigfoot. While it's not Bigfoot, it might be Bigfoot-like. Because even if you listen to some of the reports from Stan Gordon, how many of you guys are familiar with Stan Gordon, by the way? So a lot of you guys.
Good people.
If you listen to some of his reports, that they were sent in, and you had these reports of UFOs coming in with these large hairy creatures. Those weren't Bigfoot. Bigfoot reports, you're going to maybe have fingers that come down to the knees. It's going to look like a big furry critter. But these reports Stan was collecting, their arms were almost dragging the ground. They were kind of gaunt and gangly. The hair was sparse. Their eyes were glowing of their own volition. And they got out of a UFO.
That should be your number one clue.
That's number one clue. They got out of a UFO. But a lot of these reports where people will see these Bigfoot-like creatures, they were also seeing orbs out in the forest. These balls of light.
Yep.
Now, I've also seen the balls of light. Actually, when we were out filming Finding Bigfoot, we caught a ball of light. It just didn't make the show because, again, the show is looking for Bigfoot, not finding orbs of light, right? That's not the name of the show. So that part got cut. But me and the cameraman, we saw it, and it freaked us out. And myself, Cliff Barrettman was actually scanning using his thermal imager, so his eyes weren't on it. But me and the camera guy saw it, and we're like, oh, hey, somebody's bringing us batteries. Wrong. Because this thing darts off over a very steep embankment at breakneck speeds that is literally, like, when I say steep embankment, I mean, it's kind of like where I'm stepping off right here, but it just goes straight down the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. And this ball of light just went and was gone, vanished. We didn't see it anymore. There was no more trace of it. Freaked us all out. And we're like, well, we're not gonna chase that. We're done. Because that was just really weird. So now that I've seen these ghost lights and I've seen this other stuff, we're looking at it in a way where Ron has been screaming at me the whole time. But this is one of the good things about working in a research team with people who don't always agree on the topics and don't always agree on the subject matter, because it gives you a much firmer basis for your research. But this is actually what we consider the best capture of an orb on camera ever, and it was sent in to us, to the House Rangers Collective. This is from Oregon. Do you have the video clip at all, or is it just the picture?
Just a picture.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this image, that ball of light rolls into the frame. It bounces around in the frame. Now this is a bowl of water right there. Everybody here knows that if you're out in the dark and you shine light at water, what happens? The light bounces back, you get reflection. This ball went over the water and had no reflection at all. So it was moving in an intelligent manner. It had a flicker to it, so it wasn't like a moth. Like if you capture a moth on a screen, you're going to see like this fluttering path. This was a constant, I say flicker, probably not the best word, it was more of a pulse. It had this glowing pulse as it was moving. It was just kind of swelling and shrinking, and then just went off screen. There were also raccoons that you could clearly see.
Well, there's a rabbit back here.
Yeah, the rabbit.
It's a rabbit.
It was a
It's a
rabbit,
rabbit.
not a raccoon. The rabbit was right there. You could see its eyes. It saw the lights. It could visibly see it, but it wasn't casting light on the ground. It wasn't casting light on the trees or the water. It was a self-contained, intelligent ball of light, which was much like the ball of light that we saw on the ridge, because there was no light shining on the ground from this white orb. When it darted into the trees, there was no light shining on the trees. It just moved.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can actually go see this. It's on one of our podcast episodes. It's on the Orbs actually, and you'll see us do an actual walkthrough and analysis of this video, which is it's a good one. It's a really good one, and I really do think that is what UAP is. UAP and UFOs have been used interchangeably. Honestly, I don't think it's the same thing.
Kind of like Bigfoot and UFOs. They're two different things, but they're getting the same words stuck to them.
Yeah, I kind of think so. I think that they're kind of related, but I don't think it's exactly the same thing. UAP is an unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is what we see with these ghost lights, these balls of luminescence, whatever they are. And there is a list of all, not all, but some of the most famous ones. You have the Martha lights, the Cahokia lights, you've got the Brown Mountain, you've got lights of Saratoga, Vigo, etc.
How many of you guys have actually seen the ghost lights again? Because we have more people in here now than we can answer questions.
Yeah. So this is a thing that actually happens. This is something it's happened for hundreds and hundreds of years.
So it's happened
This
since we started writing things down.
Yes, this is not new.
happening.
This is not new. And I think that's one of the key things about it. It's not new. So many accounts of high strangeness can also follow these UFO sightings, including activities that have been observed, RSPK, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. That's the things moving. That's poltergeist activity, basically.
So is that just me, or did that just sound like it was one of those things at the end of like a medication commercial?
Trying to go fast there. But anyway, that's basically poltergeist activity. And there are those who believe in the parapsychology field that poltergeist activity is caused from us, not from anything else. It's our brain that is actually causing these things to happen. The interesting thing about parapsychologists is that they refuse to work with ufologists. Just like ufologists refuse to work with cryptid deck researchers.
And everybody else just doesn't like working with everybody.
Exactly. And that is why we will probably never find the answer to some of these questions. But both encounters of UFOs, occupants, and some cryptid encounters include these reports of beings speaking inside the witness's head. We showed you how this could also happen with technology rather than some kind of mysticism, right?
Right.
So this is all possible.
So how many of you guys have heard of the Bigfoot reports that mentioned mind speak? Those are all falling in this same category. We don't think, like I said, we're forming this hypothesis that there are more things going on out there than what we have labels for, and we need to find new labels for these things. We need to be able to categorize them in ways that we can actually meaningfully research them, because currently a lot of them are just getting thrown in file 13. That goes for
It's true.
UFO sightings, the paranormal experiences with like the
Yep.
RSPK, and it goes for Bigfoot reports. All of them alike, they all are experiencing this commonality of being thrown out because they don't fit a certain type.
Yep.
They don't fit somebody's specific genre.
Belief system.
The belief system.
And we've always said the belief system is the most dangerous thing to all of this. When I left this field years ago, I left because it was interfering with my belief system. That only lasted for so long. After a while, I kind of looked at it and was like, wait a minute, this doesn't do anything about belief system, but strengthened it. We're good. We're right on time. Sweet. So, as it says, and as we have said, the days of hiding from all these strange phenomena rather than investigating them, that finally seems to be ending, thank God. For years, people had had great fear to speak out about such things in public, and now we are a great many coming forward. So we showed you at the beginning, none of you are alone. So if you've seen these things, you're not alone. I think that's the most important part that we're trying to get here. And the more people who actually come up and talk about this stuff, the better off we actually will be. That's pretty much it. But I want to share with you a little bit of this before we leave. These are some of our evidence. That is the very first photo of a so-called UFO that I ever took. That was in 1995. That was in Sissonville, where I grew up. And you can see it over there. Zoomed in a little bit so you can kind of see it. That was a daylight sighting. That also occurred, by the way, when I was doing my out-of-body research. This is also something else that occurred while I was doing my out-of-body research. This was actually a year before the UFO sighting. That was 1994. That was a strange circle that appeared in our neighbor's field. This is some of the evidence we have recently collected, however. This is a light that appeared over Nitro not too long ago. This is this is it. There's the zoomed in, stabilized version of it. What's that look like to you?
It's a ball of light.
Another orb. This is Hedgesville, 4/8/22. This is Huntington, 6/19/21. More balls of light, more energy. Whatever it is, it does just seem to be, that. So are those UFOs, are those, plasma spheres? I don't know. This one was from, I believe, Harper's Ferry. Yes, Harper's Ferry. And of course, there's the famous Geiger counter, which is just the greatest story ever told for us. But yeah, guys.
So if you want to listen to more of our dronings, you can listen to us over at Wild and Weird Radio. We've got we're well over 100 episodes now. So you can go listen to your little heart's content. You can hear us and our thoughts about all these various subjects. We are getting ready to wrap up, but I want to give a little bit of time for question and answer if you have it. Yes.